I very much disagree with the idea that the American taxpayer is indignant about the fact that a victim of weaponization, okay, a victim who suffered, whether it was legal fees, lost a job, had their life turned upside down in a way that was not appropriate. If it was appropriate, there should be no compensation. And that's why we have 5 commissioners who will take a look at it. But I do not think the American people have issues with that. To the contrary, I think they do want their tax dollars spent on things like that.
After President Donald Trump decided to sue the government he represents because of the fact that his tax returns had been leaked, he made a deal with the government he represents, the DOJ in particular, and the deal would be that he would be able to create a $1.8 billion slush fund that would lack any and all transparency and allow for individuals who were so-called victims of lawfare to benefit from the taxpayer funds that would make up the $1.8 billion slush fund. So January 6th rioters would be able to apply for it. How they would get approved by it wouldn't be transparent at all. And it raised a lot of concerns, including among Republicans, which is why it appears that congressional Republicans have now defeated the plan to create this $1.8 billion slush fund. So Cenk, before I give you the details, what do you think about this?
I think that this is the best sign there is that Trump is losing his power. So if the Republicans thought Trump was going to help them in these upcoming midterms, they would have authorized this deeply corrupt, disgusting slush fund. But since they're not authorizing it, that means for the Republicans in the midterms, which is great news for everyone else.
So there was backlash from Democrats, which is to be expected. Even some backlash from Republican voters, I noticed. However, it turns out that there's bipartisan backlash. A lot of Republican lawmakers started speaking out against this, including Mike Johnson, the House Speaker, who raised concerns over the fund and even scheduled a meeting to discuss it with President Trump. The pushback came to a head during a Senate Republican conference meeting last month, in which senators voiced their concerns with the fund to Todd Blanche, who's the acting Attorney General. Senators said the closed-door meeting grew intense. Members expressed frustration, according to CBS's reporting on this, about the fund and its timing, which ultimately led GOP leaders to scrap plans to vote on funding for the Department of Homeland Security's immigration enforcement agencies. And according to CBS, Democrats threatened to force a vote on this fund, putting Republicans in a pretty difficult situation and position as they tried to move forward on funding for DHS. With some of their members likely to join Democrats in opposing the program, Senate Republicans had considered putting guardrails on the fund into the DHS bill itself, or otherwise finding avenues to dictate how the fund would operate and who might receive payments from it. Some also wanted to prevent those who assaulted law enforcement on January 6th, of course, from being compensated. And to be honest, that was one of my biggest concerns. Rewarding individuals who carried out assaults against sworn officers on January 6th or otherwise. But the actual idea of dropping the fund came after 2 federal judges weighed in on the matter. So US District Judge Lonnie Brinkema temporarily blocked the Justice Department from moving forward with work on the new $1.7+ billion anti-weaponization fund, including making any payments. And the judge's order prevents the DOJ from taking any further action pursuant to the creation or operation of the program to ensure that no funds are irreversibly distributed from it. It covers the transfer of money to the fund, consideration of any claims submitted, and disbursement of any payments. So you've got Republican lawmakers weighing in on it, rejecting the idea, and now you also have a US district judge weighing in on it and halting it entirely. In addition to the judge's ruling, US District Judge Kathleen Williams, who was the judge in charge of the original lawsuit that Trump brought against the IRS over his leaked tax returns, also announced that she would be launching an inquiry into this matter.
Yes, so look, it's a rare win for us, and it goes to how deeply unpopular Donald Trump is. Otherwise, he would have the power and the leverage to push this through and get himself paid. But it's a beautiful win, and it also portends Republican losses in the midterms, so it's doubly good news. Last month, the Supreme Court cleared the way for Alabama Republicans to pursue a new voting map, and the coverage of that decision split almost instantly along partisan lines. Now, on the left, a high factuality source says this decision paves the way for racial gerrymandering. On the right, a mixed factuality source frames it as a fix for Democrat-friendly congressional districts. So which one is it? Well, this is a major story that could affect the balance of power in the midterms, and without ground news, it would be a whole lot harder to instantly see that partisan split across the more than 200 sources covering it. That's exactly why I recommend ground news. You just saw how easy it is to look at one story and immediately compare who's pushing what. Ground news is a website and app that pulls together reporting from across the political spectrum so you can compare how the same story is being covered, see the bias distribution, check the factuality ratings of the sources, and even see who owns the outlets behind the reporting. Ground news also has a blind spot feed, which highlights stories that one side of the political spectrum is barely covering at all. So you're not just trapped inside the version of events your usual media bubble wants to feed you. If you're tired of being fed somebody else's narrative, I genuinely recommend Ground News. Go to ground.news/TYT or scan the QR code. Using our link gets you 40% off the Ground News Vantage plan, and you can also gift a subscription directly through Ground News. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.